Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is going to be our object-oriented class. We are going to start object orientation from this class onwards. So what you see here is basically the architecture we will use. We have covered a little bit of Java basics when we were studying the initial classes. So we have taken classes on variable functions, method overloading, arrays, loops. We have also done sample tutorials on these things. So by first class and second class you would have gotten the basics of these things. And most of the students who come from Java 1, they have actually forgotten these things. So that is the major issue why it takes some time to cover these things and allow students to time to get back on Java basics. So we have done 2 or 3 tutorials on this, and some videos has also been uploaded. So I hope that the audio quality of those devices, those videos were good, because initially I had really difficult time recording the audios. There was difficulty with the mic and some issues were there in the recording software. So if there is no audio, or the audio is very low, you may have difficulty. It's better if you download it and watch it on VLC, because VLC will allow you to increase the volume, more than 100% or 200%, even 300%. So that will give you a little bit of a clearer voice. I have changed the microphone I'm using, so this one, the quality will definitely be better. So let's start with object-oriented programming. So last class we have covered some tutorials, and we said we need to get back on OOP. That's true, because object-oriented programming is what Java is about. Java default, when you start a main program also, it is a class. You see, for example, so let's try to create an example of a new project and call this as theme park, because theme park is what you have here in this architecture, this relational schema you use. So theme park, I'll just give theme park underscore 1, because later on we are going to change to theme park when we go for graphical user interface. Okay, so theme park is basically the program. You can see here it creates this class called theme park. Everything in Java is going to be in a class. So what you see in this architecture is a finished database schema, relational schema, and a couple of things will change. However, we will try to stick to as much of the finished schema as possible. One of the important things you have to realize is when you come to an application, whether the application is a Java application or a simple web-based application or any desktop application, the key is we have to have a proper database. A database comes from good database design. So basically, you may have normalized and done the normalization. So if you have not done normalization, you really need to do normalization on those data set. And if you don't know what is normalization, you have to take database classes. So any database is not actually like the programmer is going to the database and he's creating any table he like. No, there are many rules about primary key assignment, foreign key assignment. There are many rules about creating logical design, conceptual design, physical design. I mean, if you take that in order, it will be conceptual design, logical design, physical design. In the logical design, you will do the normalization, you will also create the tables, and you are going to assign attributes, keep the data dictionary, the data types domain, and all those things. So after you have done those things, you come to this stage where you have a database. We are not going to repeat those database steps, so that's why I am going to give you a completed relational schema. And using the schema you are going to use for your assignment. So if you look at this specific system here, you can notice we don't have inheritance, because we will study that as a separate topic. And in Java 1 you may have done inheritance, but that's okay. I don't expect you to have studied inheritance. So from this specific system, we can see here we have at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 classes, and normally every class is going to be a model or a class in Java. So a model is usually referred to as the class by itself. Let's go and create a customer class. So you go to here in your project. So I have all these programs that I have created. Let me close these things. Close all these projects to make it easier. Always clean up your working space That way you will have less difficulties and less obstructions, easy to focus. Okay, so this is the program right now we are working on. We have this theme park. Into this I'm going to add a new Java class, and this Java class is going to be customer.java. It will create customer.java. See, so in this class what we have here is customer has an ID, customer has a name and a phone number. Just only this information for now. Of course he can have a date of birth, he can have other details, but for the purpose of this specific database system, we only need the customer ID and name and phone number. In this case, customer ID here actually refers to his ID card number, but we will do something else here. We will try to stick it with a database column of auto incremented ID. So we will use it as an ID. So we have here ID, string ID. It's not going to be a string, it's integer ID. That is going to be customer ID. In all the tables we are going to use an integer ID as a primary key column, and that is because that way we will have more consistency. But still we are going to keep customer ID card, because ID card is used for verification of the customer in this database system. If you look at the scenario where you have seen there is a customer who has his ID card number which is going to use for the booking of the rooms, for example. So he definitely will have his ID card number, which is going to be a string. So ID number, and those field names and the fields that you use here, it should be as much as possible the same. Okay, so it doesn't have ID here, and on the database you have them as underlined. However, on the Java terminology, those have camel casing. So we have ID number with ID card. I'll use ID card number, is more easier. ID card number. This is called camel casing, where the second word has a capital letter, or every other word has a capital letter. ID card number. Into this one we can add other things like customer name. So ID card number, customer name, and phone number. This way. The ID card, the Java syntax is without underscores. Of course it allows you underscores, but this is generally what is best practice, even if in the database they have underscores. Now in some cases the student thinks, or the programmer thinks, they will use the same variable name as the column name of the database. Fine, that will be fine, actually useful. In many programming languages they actually follow that even. Okay, so you have the phone number, that is the information about the customer. Okay, so that is what you can derive directly from that relational schema. However, if you have taken database, Java previously, in classes we have many other things. One of them is called the constructor, and that is the default constructor. Okay, so what is a default constructor? A default constructor is a method with the class name and it has no parameters, and you can write it down using your keyboard. I mean, you can just write it public customer like this. This is same name as the class name and it has no parameters. This is called default constructor. Since these things can also be generated, you can right click, you can say insert code for constructor, and we will create the default constructor, that means no parameters, like this. And I will also generate the overloaded constructor. The overloaded constructor. What is overloaded constructor? Overloaded constructor has the same name as the class name again, but this time it has all these data. So it has all this. This is called the overloaded constructor. You must know this terminology. And the reason is, when you create a customer, you can create it using overload constructor directly if needed, or you can use this constructor which actually sets everything to 0 or everything to null, because by default we don't want it to have null, so we give something equal something, instead of making it null. So that is why we actually use the constructor. This way, if you ever created a variable they are going to have something instead of nothing, instead of null. Okay, that's the overload constructor. Another important thing is the getters and setters. Getters and setters are what you need. Getters and setters. Why? Because by default these things are going to be private. If you haven't already added private, go and add them. Usually this is the best way to do it. This is called encapsulation. You are hiding the details, the variables are hidden, and no one else has access to these private variables. So that is the reason why you are creating these classes. Getters, sorry, not classes, getters, setters. The purpose of getters and setters is to allow other classes and other programs to have access to your own data. So if anyone needs access to customer name, they have to use the customer getter name, get name, like that. Let's generate them. Also, for this is better to generate. You have to realize that in the final exam, if you are asked to write them, you should be able to write them. So, for example, insert code, getters and setters. You have select everything. You see, these are called getters. What is a get ID? Get ID is a method that you use in order to get this private variable. So for every private variable there will be a getter, get ID card number, get name. Why? Because that variable is private and we need a public method in order to access it. So this is the standard. As for the setters, again every item has a setter, and the setter is just going to set that variable. Another thing you should note about the getters is, remember, they are going to return this data type. This is an integer, so this is an integer, yeah, therefore this return is integer. This is a string, therefore return type is string. And in the setter, they are only going to set, that means they are going to put this variable here, and this is the setter, it doesn't return anything, therefore it's called void. Void means don't need to return anything. So this is how the getters and setters are created in Java. So minimally, when you have in the exam a model like this or class like this, you must have a default constructor, overloaded constructor, all the getters and all the setters. That is minimum required from you. Okay. So we have this information for the customer. Now, if you look at this example here, this is a customer, and he has all his information. And another class that is related to him is this booking records. Okay, so we are not really going to go into create this yet, but for now we might take a simpler example where you have a room and a hotel, because this one has too many variables and it is going to be complicated, because the reason why a customer is connected to booking records and not connected to the room is in the database design you will see customer cannot be connected to the room directly. This is going to be a many-to-many relationship. Therefore, it has to be broken down by adding this composite quantity, this composite table. So that is database things that I don't want to go into, but you should know that this is called a composite entity because there was many-to-many relationship between customer and room. Okay. So let's take this example, room and hotel, next. But before that, we can test out the customer in the main program. Now that you have a customer class, what you do is you create a customer, and let's say this customer is Ahmed, equal new customer. So one of the things you can do is you can use default constructor. What does that mean? That means by default it will give these kind of values. You have no details. Why? Because you don't know the details of the customer. You are going to ask him. So you can ask the customer to insert those details, or let him fill a form and he will enter his details. If you really know the customer details, you can create customer by using these values. For example, you can see here it says integer ID, string card, number, phone, all these things you're going to create. And generally speaking, you will understand that in the primary key field it has that ID thingy. so that ID, the primary key, is not really going to be sent to the database because it's auto incremented, so it's going to automatically increment. But for now, if we think about it, we can actually create the customer using default constructor or send everything like this. But when you are sending, you have to give values. ID 1, ID card number, this is a string, A0973, okay, for example. And name is also a string, Ahmed, Ayman, for example. And phone number, you are sending his phone number here, like this. So this is an example of a customer by using overloaded constructor. So now they have this information. And if you don't already have the details, you can create the details by after asking the customer. But that is a whole different story, right? So what you will do is, if you don't know the customer name, you will actually use Ahmed dot set name. So Ahmed dot, sorry, there is a capital A. Variable names, it's advised to have simple names, remember, lowercase. Ahmed dot set name. Let's change his name. So let's say his name is Ayman Ahmad, not Ahmad Ayman. You see? So you're changing the name. So if you look at the name now, as out, what is his name? His name is Ahmed dot get name. So it's going to get his name, Ahmed Ayman. Now if you try to do it after changing his name, then his name will be Ayman Ahmed. That's right. So where's the output? Ahmed Ayman, and we change it to Ayman Ahmed. So this is how you access the variable through the getter. See here, getter. You're getting the name. And when you want to change the variable, you can't directly change. You have to send it to the setter, and the setter will change. The setter. Yes, where is the setter? The setter will change the name. Okay. And this syntax also you must be familiar with already. And that is, when you are setting up, this name variable can be the same or it can be different. If it is the same, then you must have this keyword here. Otherwise it will be an anonymous. It doesn't know what is what. This is to say that what is on the left is what belongs to this class, and this is what comes from the function. So when you generate it, it's going to generate this way. This is an example of a simple customer. Similarly, you will be able to create a room class and a hotel class, but the difference here is, you can see here, room has a hotel ID, so which hotel the room belongs to is set by this hotel ID, because that is going to be what is in the room table. So when you create a class in Java also, that item should represent what it represents. It is a hotel ID, therefore it should be a hotel ID here, not a hotel. Okay, so hotel ID. And you can of course use that hotel ID to get that hotel. This is a different story. So generally speaking, we have a customer class that we have created here, and similar way you will be doing the room class and a hotel class, and you will create an example hotel first, then you will create an example room by giving that hotel ID into the room, because you cannot give a hotel that doesn't exist. The hotel must exist before you can have a room, right? So just because there is a room doesn't mean there cannot be a hotel. There must be a hotel. This is why the room exists in the first place. If there was no hotel, there won't be any rooms, right? So first you have to have the hotel. Okay, so I will leave the hotel class and room class for you as a tutorial to do. But meantime, together with the object-oriented programming, I want to start a different concept, and that is the MVC architecture that we talk about usually when we come to interface design and data presentation. So the reason why we talk about MVC is many web frameworks and also applications that they are developing for mobile environments, everything tries to have this organized architecture. So you have your model, which is called the customer.java in this case, or in other cases also it will be the specific class name which represents the database table name. So a model can represent a database table by having the column names that are exactly there in the database, or column names that represent those column names in the database. That is the model. And V stands for the view. The view is what you see. What you see. Okay, so meaning as a customer, what you see when you try to add a customer or edit a customer. So for the view, there will be many views. One is you are going to see all customers. Then you are going to see one customer. Then you are going to edit a customer, delete a customer, those things. So this is an example of some of the things that you will do when you are using a view. And that view here refers to the page that you are seeing when you are doing this specific work. And another important thing is the last C here, which is equal to controller. Okay? And what is controller? Basically, this is everything, right? This is everything. So the controller is going to be what is going to control everything. You click something, you click a button, you generate an event, you are actually triggering an event in the controller. So the controller will have actually add, read, update, and delete. So the basic name is CRUD, right? For any type of controller work, we call them as create, read, update, and delete. These are the basic things that you do for any model. Like if you have a database, and the database is connected to the customer class, the database has those fields like ID, customer ID card, name, and phone number. Now if you don't have those details here, you have to make sure you have those details. And once you have those details, your database and your customer are kind of connected. And although it's not yet connected, you have to give a MySQL driver and everything. We'll go there later. But once you have a controller, that controller is going to have these methods minimally. Minimally, it will have add, read, update, delete. In addition to that, there will be other methods if required, but you can create other types of scenarios also if you need, where you can have shared methods between different controllers. That's a whole different story. But generally speaking, because this is the customer, you have to add him, you have to view him, update his details, and delete a customer. And these things should work fine. So this is what MVC architecture does. And what it does is the controller sends the data to the database by referring to the model, that is customer.java, and the view retrieves the data. The view shows the data sent by the controller. The controller will send some data to the view, and it will display those data to you so that you will see the data. And from the view, if the view has a requirement to do a lookup or to change something, to update something, then it can trigger events in the controller, or it can call functions directly from the model, or it can call functions from shared interfaces or inner classes, or whatever type of medium that the Java program is configured to use. Generally speaking, it will be some kind of an interface where they are sharing and implementing, or it may be a common interface where they all have access to. One of the example is the database controller, because database controller will have access to MySQL, and you as a separate controller that manages customer, you will not care about that. You will just ask the database controller to add a customer. You don't worry about the SQL part of it. Okay, that's the reason why you have to have all separate controllers for these things. So based on this, we already have a customer class, and for now our view is in the main class, that CLI window, that window output we are seeing here. So we are going to convert this into graphical in the next class, but for now, if you know how to create a model class, and in the main class, if you can create a customer and change his details, assign his details, and those kind of things, that shows the ability to manipulate a single class. That is what is required for now. So what you are going to do is, in your tutorial, you are going to create a hotels.java class, and also you are going to create a room.java class based on this data. Once you have those data, you are going to associate them by creating a hotel. Then you are going to create a room, and in the room you will have the hotel ID of that hotel. Of course, data, only remember this data comes from the graphical user interface, but for now you are going to simulate it by creating that object and displaying its information. You are not going to store anything to any database yet. So follow the example I have shown for the customer and try to do the hotel and the room, and that will be your submission for object-oriented programming class. Minimally, we are just covering the basics of how the class can be created and an object can be created and so on. So the next tutorial I'm going to show you how you can create a view for the customer by having an area where you can add a customer first, because before you view any customer, you have to be able to add a customer, right? So we will fill out the controller, we will fill out the views, create the views, and we will connect them. So all this next session we will do it. Thank you very much for listening to the video, and that's it for the first class on object-oriented programming.